Joining me now, former Miami Beach Mayor Philip Levine and The Hill columnist and Independent Women's Voice fellow Kristin Tate. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Mr. Mayor, can you tell us, is there left now, 2 years after 2 weeks to stop the spread, is there still an argument that people should be required to wear masks when they travel?
James, I think no one wants to wear a mask. No one wanted to have to go through this pandemic, but here we are. I'm a guy who's been in the cruise industry. I'm an entrepreneur, and I think no industry's been hit harder than the cruise industry. But the reality is that we had to listen to the CDC, and of course, we got involved in this federal lawsuit because we thought the CDC was going a little too far. But the reality is that we don't, as a country, necessarily want a federal judge to make health, wellness, and these type of medical decisions for us. We have the CDC. I think the CDC maybe should have acted possibly faster. But the reality is that we can't have a precedent. We can't have judicial activism where a judge is making a decision like this. I mean, maybe a judge should decide that we shouldn't wear seatbelts anymore. Maybe they should no longer have polio vaccines required. So,
wait a minute. Isn't this what we want judges to do, to be a check on bureaucratic authority? I mean, it's not like you can come through this whole drama in the last 2 years and think the CDC has brilliantly handled every decision.
But I think the CDC has done the best job they can. And I believe that if the president and the administration thought that they wanted to get the mask back on, they would have asked for a stay from the judge, and they didn't. But what they're trying to do, I believe, is they're trying to make sure this is not a precedent, that these agencies are not overrun by federal judges so consistently. And as an industry, in the cruise industry, I could tell you that we've been very frustrated with the CDC, but I still believe we have to rely on experts. I'm very happy we don't have to wear masks. That I can tell you. I got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and we're flying. I can't stand putting masks on them.
Okay, Kristin, I think the mayor has raised the excellent point. If they really believed this was a health need, they would have gone for a stay rather than an appeal. Is it important that we give the federal government, preserve their authority to force us to wear masks?
Of course not. The CDC should be making recommendations, but not putting in place these kinds of mandates. And this is all so political. I mean, let's just zoom out here and look at the Democrats' logic when it comes to mask mandates. If you're an illegal immigrant trying to enter our country via the southern border, the COVID crisis ends for you on May 23rd. If you're a congressional Democrat, the COVID crisis ended for you just in time for the State of the Union, where none of them wore masks. But if you are an average American just trying to take a flight with your family, including your 2-year-old or your 4-year-old, this administration says that the COVID crisis is not over for you and you all must wear masks on the full duration of your plane. Of course, Joe Biden and a lot of these politicians, they don't take commercial airlines, so this doesn't apply to them. And, I have to chuckle at this, James, because these liberals who say they believe in science will not acknowledge that being on a plane is actually one of the safest places to be if you're concerned about COVID because of these advanced air filtration systems. I mean, the CDC has shown no evidence to us that a plane is any more risky than an ordinary building like an office building or a restaurant where mask mandates were lifted a long time ago. So people are just sick of these mandates. They're ready to take the masks off. But hey, if my fellow panelists or, anyone else out there want to wear masks, go for it. You can wear 2, 3, or even 4 masks on the plane. Just don't force me to do it. Don't force my family to do it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I am a little confused. Are you going to be masking up if it's not required? And if not, why do you want this authority preserved?
But the reality is that probably not. And that we've been eating in restaurants, we've been eating without masks. There's no question about it. A lot of us have gotten vaccinated. But here's the thing. Who are we fighting with? Are we fighting with the CDC? Are we fighting with people that are trying to keep us healthy? I mean, it's almost like, you don't want to take the medicine. I don't want to take NyQuil. I have a cold, but I should really probably take that, or I should take it now. The reality is that we should not be fighting among ourselves over something like this. We do want to let science, we do want to let doctors. There's no question there's been frustration with the CDC. And if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, obviously you don't have to wear a mask today. But I think we're fighting over things that just are a little bit ridiculous and more divisive to our country.
Okay, I guess we'll go back to Kristin on this issue of CDC's authority. Obviously, they have strayed into a lot of political areas. They have gone back and forth on masking. It was the CDC who tried to impose an eviction moratorium at one point. How much trust should we have in this bureaucracy to make health decisions free of politics.
Again, it's just very unfortunate that this bureaucracy has lost the public's trust because it has shown that a lot of these decisions are based on politics. And once again, the CDC can and should make recommendations based on science, and people can make their own risk calculations based on those recommendations. But they should not be in the business of making mandates for the American people. And one more aspect here that I think gets overlooked but is very important is these masks really dehumanize people in certain ways. I have a neighbor down here in Texas who happens to be a flight attendant, and she has been complaining about this for over a year. The staff on these airplanes say that, people acting rude or having fights on planes has really increased since these mask mandates came into effect. And it's because we're covering people's faces, and especially for our service workers, like airline flight attendants, it's really been horrible for them in a multitude of ways. So, I think that's another aspect that doesn't really get talked about a lot, but our service workers have really suffered as well over the course of the last 2 years.
Yeah, not good for kids in classrooms either. Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. And
right.
When we come back, progressive anti-police policies are hurting the people they were supposed to be helping.
Where are all those who stated Black Lives Matter? If Black Lives Matters, then the thousands of people I saw on the street when Floyd was murdered should be on the street right now stating that the lives of these Black children that are dying every night matters. We can't be hypocrites.
That's New York City Mayor Eric Adams criticizing the Black Lives Matter movement for staying silent on the skyrocketing number of Black murder victims. This follows the rise of the defund the police rhetoric and progressive anti-police policies. The number of Black Americans murdered in 2015 increased by almost 1,000 after the shooting of Michael Brown in 2014. We saw a similar phenomenon in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd, where homicides increased 32% from nearly 7,500 in 2019 to more than 9,900 in 2020. This is what happens when you denounce law enforcement and call police off the streets. Isn't that right, Mr. Mayor?
I couldn't agree with you more, and I also agree with Mayor Adams. He's been in office not even 6 months, but he knows what he has to do. The problem that a mayor has today, it's not a matter of what they want to do, it's how much authority do they have. In Mayor Adams' situation, he has a very left-wing, very progressive city council that are blocking him every way possible. He has a district attorney that is very left-wing, very progressive. It's unfortunate that he can't do what he really wants to do. He's done a lot. He's put together that special crime unit to get guns off the street. But listen, the reality is that we've gone through a pandemic. A lot of things have been accelerated. But if you do not have a strong police force, if you do not have a fully funded police force that's motivated, that's compensated, that's trained well, then we're going to have the chaos and crime in our cities we're having. And I think what we're seeing now is a lot of mayors around the country, especially Democratic mayors, are getting religion and understanding that they better take care of this problem.
Okay, but this question of what the mayor of New York City can do about this, if he decides going forward that he's going to back the police and he's going to get in tough fights if necessary with the city council, isn't this a problem he can help solve?
Well, he absolutely is doing that, 100%. He's going to battle. He is pushing his agenda as fast as he can. He went to battle with that Black Lives Matter individual that he was talking about there. He's doing everything he can do. But remember something. He's following the worst mayor in American history, Bill de Blasio, who, by the way, was the best thing that ever happened to Florida, as you can imagine, because everyone's moved from New York to Florida and to Miami specifically. So got to give this man a chance. He's a good guy. He's a former police captain. He knows what he has to do.
Kristin, what do you see here looking at New York and other cities where the rhetoric has changed? Politicians who previously embraced the defunding recklessness are now often saying that was a mistake. But are we seeing the kind of changes that will make streets safer?
Not really, unfortunately. This crime story is so sad. It's open season for criminals in these Democrat-run cities. And, these radical leftists, they keep getting elected, I think, because much of the Democrat voter base does not understand the consequences of far-left liberalism. A lot of these voters live in doorman-protected buildings or in very high-end neighborhoods that are relatively safe, so they keep voting for these nuts until the crime just gets so bad that they start noticing it in their own lives. And then what do? They pick up and they move down to Florida or Texas or Arizona. It is the most vulnerable people who can't afford to leave who get hurt by this stuff the most. Those people in the neighborhoods who are being victimized by crime and can't leave New York City or LA or wherever they live. This just breaks my heart. And we've got to get our police back on the streets and beef up the forces and really get a more law and order mentality in these cities. But I just don't see that really happening.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Please stay with us, both of you. We're going to come back and talk about tensions running high at the border as the Biden administration prepares to repeal a Trump-era pandemic restriction. The White House is set to rescind Title 42 restrictions next month. That's the Trump-era COVID policy that allows immediate deportation of migrants at the border. This despite opposition, even from within the Democratic Party ranks. Here's what White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki had to say.
Title 42 is not an immigration authority. It is a public health authority. Congress gave the CDC authority to make determinations about when it should be lifted. So right now, we are planning and preparing for the end of Title 42 enforcement on May 23rd.
In March, more than 7,000 migrants crossed the border per day on average. The Department of Homeland Security estimates that when Title 42 ends, those numbers could climb to anywhere from 12 to 18,000 crossers per day. Let's take this up with our panel now. And Kristin, the president was confused this week between his mask mandate and the Title 42 issue of limiting migration. But I think maybe everyone can understand his confusion because the message from the administration seems to be everybody needs to keep masks on traveling by air because COVID is still an emergency. But illegal migration at the border, there's no longer a COVID emergency. So this Title 42 can go away. Can you make sense of this for us or try to?
No, I mean, I can't. There's no logic here, and it's very insulting to the American people. But if DHS, if their projections come to pass, and we really do see about 18,000 migrants apprehended per day, that means in just 6 weeks, we are going to be apprehending about 750,000 illegal immigrants. That is more than the population of Seattle. You can't just import, new U.S. cities basically every few months with no consequences. And we're already seeing the consequences of unchecked illegal immigration. I live in Houston, and our city, it's like the hospitals are totally overcrowded. The schools are overcrowded. You can't go to an emergency room here without waiting hours. This is about to get much worse. Every town in America could become a border town if this is left unchecked. So it's very concerning, and I don't see the administration really having a plan to take care of this problem.
There's no plan. Phil, isn't this a great opportunity if the president wanted to lead to craft an immigration deal now? To say, let's end chaos at the border, let's have security, but also more legal migration?
James, 100%. But I think what you really hit there was legal migration. There's no question we need strong, controlled borders. No one wants porous borders. No one. Can't imagine any American would like to see that. Especially Hispanic voters, who are the most strongest. And the Democrats need to understand that they believe that we need to have the right kind of border control. But let's talk about a bigger issue in our country right now. Our unemployment rate is so low. We cannot find service workers for hotels, for restaurants. We need people that want to live the American dream, that actually want to work. We have millennials. They're not only quitting their jobs, they don't even want to go to the office. So we need to find people. And especially after this LVMH, Gucci, Chanel, French stimulus plan, as you know, because we gave everybody Gucci slides across the country with this PPP program, we actually have made our problem worse. We need workers. I could tell you that's what's happening right now in the service sector of our country. So we better figure out a way to get people to come in that actually want to take the jobs that Americans don't want to take right now.
Okay, we're going to leave it there, and when we come back, Florida lawmakers have had enough of Disney's public feud A major blow to the company that runs the happiest place on earth. GOP lawmakers in Florida have voted on a bill that will eliminate Walt Disney Company's unique tax status, which for the past 55 years has allowed it to self-govern its land. It comes amid a clash between Republican lawmakers and Disney over the woke company's opposition to a recent parental rights law. Kristin, watching this, I can only imagine that some Disney shareholders are saying, why are you using our asset to bully Floridians into accepting an educational policy they don't want?
Exactly. Disney has made itself the arm of the Democratic Party on a losing issue. The vast majority of people support the parental rights and education bill, including, by the way, 52% of Florida Democrats. So when Disney is allowing a small portion of its woke workforce to basically hijack the company, they are turning their backs not just on their shareholders, but on their customers, which is the parents of small children. So I'm glad to see Republicans fighting back against this and, frankly, finally going on the offense.
Phil, it seems to me Disney didn't realize that they need Florida more than Florida needs Disney. Is that how you see it?
I'm not sure. I mean, I can tell you this. When Walt Disney came to the state of Florida and he went to Orlando in 1967 and made this kind of a deal, he turned a little area that was a backwater into a major international tourist destination. It's the largest private employer in the state of Florida. If Orlando didn't have Disney, it would be Okeechobee. But the reality is that, yes, I agree with Kristin. There's no question that parental control is paramount in any state in our country, probably in the world. Was this an issue before? I'm not sure it was. But the unfortunate situation is that when you have somebody that is, pushing around a major company like this. They went after the cruise industry before. Now it's Disney World. Is NASA next? I don't know.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to both of you, Philip and Kristin. That's it for us this week.